Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all finding success in the Ultra League, and I hope you're all enjoying this new meta. And if you're struggling to find a team that works because maybe you don't have the best Excel Pokemon for Ultra League, then this is the video for you, because in this video I'm going to suggest a team that is not going to require any Excel Pokemon. The team is going to be Cresselia on the lead with Grass Knot and Moonblast, with Feraligatr, Shadow Feraligatr on the save swap, and Cobalion in the back. This team gets a rating of B for coverage, A for bulk, B for safety, and A for consistency on PvPoke, so you know it is going to perform very well. It's also very similar to a team that I used to use last season, but in place of Cobalion, I was running it with Virizion. But when I ran it with Virizion, I ran Cresselia with Moonblast and Future Sight. This isn't necessarily the most accessible team because you have two legendaries on the team, and then you have a Feraligatr with a Community Day move. So it is going to require a little bit of investment, time investment especially, and you might need some elite TMs, especially since Cobalion's Sacred Sword is a legacy move. Grass Knot on Cresselia is a legacy move, although I would say you can run it with Moonblast and Future Sight. And also, Hydro Cannon on Feraligatr is going to be that Community Day move. So in that sense, it's not the most beginner-friendly team in that you're not going to be able to make an account today and directly have access to all of these Pokemon. But if you've been playing Pokemon Go for a while and maybe you don't have the best Excel Pokemon and you want to get into PvP, I would highly recommend this team. I just want to say one thing. As I was playing, I started to feel like Pangoro would have done a lot better than Cobalion, especially since I started running into a lot of Golurks. This team does struggle a little bit against ghost types, so if you have that Pangoro, you'll have much better coverage for ghost types on the back. And according to PvPoke, the team will struggle against Dusknoir and Trevenant, so having that Pangoro will give you coverage against Pokemon like that. I will just say, if you put Pangoro on the team, I'd recommend running Cresselia with Future Sight and Moonblast. That way, if you see Talonflame on the lead, you can take care of it with Cresselia. But despite the ABA weakness to fire, this team still performed very well. Feraligatr in the back is so good against, I was starting to see a lot of ground types, so it's good against those, as long as you don't get your Cobalion aligned to a ground type, which I started struggling with a little bit because more people are running ground types for the poison types because, my goodness, this meta is very poison type heavy. So now there's a lot of ground types in the back, which is why I felt like Pangoro or Virizion would do better in place of Cobalion. I think, actually, Poliwrath or Scrafty before nerf would have done a lot better. But too bad they got nerfed. So now our options are Virizion, Cobalion, or Pangoro. But what I really did like about Cobalion is how well it could handle those poison types that I was seeing, like Drapion and Tentacruel. It is going to resist all poison type moves, and it walls a Drapion that isn't running Aqua Tail. Even with Aqua Tail, Drapion isn't going to be able to take your Cobalion out unless they shield. And Virizion and Pangoro are not going to be able to handle Tentacruel. They might be able to handle Drapion as long as it's not running Sludge Bomb. But yeah, overall, a very solid team, and I could highly recommend it if you have the Pokemon for it. It is going to be much cheaper than building a team with a bunch of XLs on it. Okay, that's enough rambling. Let's get into the battles. In this match, we are going to be up against a Malamar on the lead, and this isn't a good lead for either of us. I'm going to have to land 2 Moonblasts on this Malamar to take it out. And I think with the Psywave damage, if they shield one of our Moonblasts, they might be able to take us out with 2 Foul Plays. But I'm going to throw the Moonblast. I learned from one of my previous matches to just throw the Moonblast and then swap into my Feraligatr. And if they throw a move from Malamar, then I will shield it. However, in this case, my opponent swaps immediately into Tentacruel. Tentacruel is going to be able to wall our Feraligatr, which is not running Crunch. But we managed to get it into the red, going just Hydro Cannon, and then we bring in Cresselia, and my opponent is going to go for a Foul Play here. Now, I go for a Grass Knot, and then I recognize something. My opponent lives with 1 HP. I pause. I don't want them to farm me down with what they have in the back because I think I know what they have in the back. It's going to be a Feraligatr of their own. I've seen this team a lot. Yep, it is that Feraligatr. I believe Jonkus made a video on this team, and now a lot of people are running it. And I couldn't have this Feraligatr start getting an energy lead because these Hydro Cannons are going to hurt. I'm going to go ahead and double shield my Cobalion, and my opponent still has 2 shields left, but I need to watch for a catch, and I was really hoping I could catch a Hydro Cannon from them, but I end up getting farmed down. But I am going to be able to double kick their Feraligatr down. I survive a Hydro Cannon from them, and then I can take their 1 HP Tentacruel out and take that win. GG's to our opponent. Moving on to the next battle, we're going to be up against a Shadow Nidoqueen, and this is where I needed Future Sight. I'm still going to pretend like I have it. I'll build up to it and then I'll throw a Grass Knot. I'm going to go for a Grass Knot here, and we take a shield from them. This is exactly what I wanted. I'm going to go for another Grass Knot, and then I am going to go ahead and shield my opponent's next move because they're still in the yellow and I want them to get a little bit lower. Also, this Nidoqueen will wall my Cobalion if it goes up against it. But I mess up so badly here and I let them catch a Grass Knot on Talonflame. They even sneak in and Incinerate, and now I'm going to have to take a fly on my Feraligatr. I'm going to go for a Hydro Cannon here, and they let it go. Thank goodness. Cobalion was not going to have a fun time against this, but if they went ahead and shielded the Hydro Cannon, actually I would have been able to make it to another Hydro Cannon myself if I shielded, so I would have been fine. The Talonflame would not have been up against my Cobalion. But yeah, their final Pokemon is going to be a Shadow Feraligatr of their own. And it looks like I am going to be in a good position here because I have a shield left and I can take 1 Hydro Cannon from this Feraligatr. I can actually take 2 from full health, but I am going to go ahead and shield this next move. We CMP tied on the Sacred Sword, so I'm going to be able to throw it immediately, take the Feraligatr out, and take that win. Moving on to the next battle, we're going to be up against a Virizion, which is an amazing lead for me, but my backline does not want to see this Pokemon. My opponent swaps into a Shadow Magnezone, and I have a Cobalion, which is going to destroy this Magnezone. I do let the first Wild Charge go because I know Cobalion can handle it. My opponent goes ahead and shields my first Sacred Sword, and then they make it to another move, and at this point I have to shield if I want to maintain alignment. I go for another Sacred Sword, and they shield again using both shields on that Magnezone, and then they go ahead and top left. I wonder what they had in the back, but GG's to the opponent. Moving on to the next battle, we're going to be up against a Tapu Fini on the lead. This is a really good lead for me. I'm going to go for these Grass Knots, which are going to hit for super effective. But my opponent is going to go ahead and double shield, I believe, their Tapu Fini. We'll see. I go for another Grass Knot here, and I think this would be enough to take them out if they don't shield. They go ahead and invest that shield. I can go for another Grass Knot, and we take both shields from them. And at this point, I'm like, okay, Feraligatr with 2 shields can take anything out, I think. So I decide to let Cresselia go here, and I'm going to come in with Feraligatr and start building up energy. I am going to throw the Hydro Cannon before they reach a move, however, because I want this to stay healthy. We take the Tapu Fini out, and then my opponent brings in a Virizion. Okay, I'm going to be able to land the Ice Beams because my opponent doesn't have any shields left, and I think I might be able to farm them down. However, I go for a catch on what I thought would have been a Leaf Blade. And this was a huge mistake because now they are going to be able to farm our Cobalion down with the Mud Slaps from their Golurk. I had no idea they had a Golurk in the back. If I knew, I would have just stayed in that match against the Virizion and gone for a full farm down and then had a Hydro Cannon for this Golurk. I would have been able to one-shot it, but I mess up so badly, and now unfortunately they are going to be able to take us out with Sacred Sword and then a double kick, and they are going to take that win because I switch-locked my Cobalion into their Golurk and I got farmed down. Okay, this next battle I play so poorly. I considered not including this battle in this video, but you know, whatever. It's in here. We'll take a look at my stupid mistakes, but we are going to be up against a Galarian Moltres on the lead, which is not great for us because the Sucker Punches are hurting my Cresselia. Good thing they give up Switch because they swap into a Licky Licky, and you'll see what they have in the back. I really should have won this. I don't want to take another Earthquake, so I am going to go ahead and throw the Sacred Sword before they can get an Earthquake off, and their final Pokemon is going to be a Golurk. Okay, This is going to get really tricky because we're going to get farmed down and they're going to have so much energy, and they also have a lot of energy on their Moltres, and they have 2 shields left. I go ahead and I shield here an Ancient Power Bait. Really unfortunate for me. I'm going to go for a Hydro Cannon now, and I have no shields left. I'm able to reach another Hydro Cannon, and it looked like that was CMP tie, so I thought it was game over, but my opponent lets their Moltres go. And here I tried to catch the move on my Cresselia. For some reason, the game didn't let me switch. And this is where I mess up because I didn't know I had that much energy on Cress. If I had just thrown on good timing, I would have been able to make it to 2 Grass Knots and take the Golurk out. But unfortunately, we're going to take a loss there. Moving on to the next match, we're going to be up against a Clefable, and I'm just going to stay in this and soft lose this. I know that if I no shield, I will lose because the Clefable is going to be able to take us out with 2 Moonblasts and then a Swift. So I'm just going to go straight Moonblast, and we take the second Moonblast here, and I can go for another Moonblast before my opponent can reach that Swift, get them into the red, and then I am going to let my Cresselia go here and come in with Feraligatr and farm down. Feraligatr with an energy lead is very scary in the Ultra League right now and in the Great League. But they are going to bring in their own Feraligatr now, and I am going to let the first Hydro Cannon go. I'm able to reach another one. Let's see if we take a shield from my opponent. They don't shield. They're in the red now. And I decide to invest a shield. I still have no idea what their final Pokemon could be. I thought it might be a Drapion and I would benefit from shielding my Feraligatr because my Cobalion would not need shields. But it looks like their final Pokemon is going to be a Cobalion. My Feraligatr is still pretty healthy, so I think I can make it to a Hydro Cannon on Feraligatr. So I'm going to let my Cobalion go, bring in Feraligatr, and as soon as I get the Hydro Cannon, I'm going to throw it, watching for a catch, of course. But we're able to throw it in the middle of their double kick, and they are in farm down range now. I'm going to be able to farm down their Feraligatr, which they bring back in, and then I can Shadow Claw their Cobalion down and take that win. GG's to our opponent, and that is going to be a 3-2 in that first set. Oh, I also want to say I decided to shield my Feraligatr there because I thought maybe they would have a Golurk in the back, which a lot of people are pairing Clefable lead with Golurk in the back. So there was that possibility. But moving on to the next battle, we're going to be up against a Virizion on the lead, and our opponent immediately swaps into a Shadow Hippowdon. My first instinct was to swap into that Feraligatr, but I started thinking, I think my opponent is trying to draw the Feraligatr out. They might have a Golurk in the back, and that is going to be terrible for Cobalion. So I decided to stay in with my Cresselia, and I am going to be able to go for another Grass Knot here, and we take their final shield. And because we took their final shield, I'm okay with letting Cresselia go because now I can bring in Feraligatr, and even if we are switch locked up against this Virizion, I'm going to be able to land an Ice Beam, and once I land the Ice Beam, I should be able to shield and farm their Virizion down and have so much energy for whatever their final Pokemon is going to be. I go ahead and shield this next Leaf Blade, and we farm them down, and their final Pokemon is not what I expected. It's going to be a Tentacruel. I am going to go for these Hydro Cannons, but Cobalion anyways is going to do really well against this Tentacruel. The Scalds are not going to be enough to take me out. I tried to catch a Skull here. Really unnecessary. I don't know why I did that, but I just gave them free energy. I can now bring in Cobalion, and we get an attack drop. That's really unfortunate. And I thought I messed up here. I thought I hadn't been keeping track of their energy, but they go for a Weather Ball. I know that they're not going to be able to reach a Scorching Sand, so I go for a full farm down with Cobalion, and I'm going to go for that Stone Edge immediately on the Tentacruel. We do see MP tie. The Stone Edge is not enough to take the Tentacruel out because if you remember, they got that attack drop, but I am going to be able to Shadow Claw their Tentacruel down and take that win. GG's to our opponent. Moving on to the next battle, we are going to be up against a Pangoro on the lead, which is a really nice lead for us because we have that Moonblast, which is going to hit for 4 times super effective. Our opponent swaps into a Drapion, and again, a really nice swap for us because we have Cobalion, and Cobalion is going to be able to wall Drapion. This one is running Aqua Tail, so because it is running Aqua Tail, I recognize here that it was going to be able to reach a 4th Aqua Tail, so I went for the Stone Edge rather than the Sacred Sword because it would have survived a Sacred Sword. Luckily, they let the Stone Edge go, their Drapion's now out of the way. They bring Pangoro back in, and we're even able to reach a Sacred Sword on the Pangoro, and I was so surprised with how much damage that did. Now I don't even have to go for the Moonblast up against this Pangoro. I can just go for a Grass Knot. It will be enough to take them out. Just watching for a catch. I waited a turn there, and my opponent's going to go ahead and invest their shields. So I'm thinking what they have in the back might be weak to Cresselia, but I decide not to shield. We'll see what they have. It might be a Tentacruel. I swap it to Feraligatr so that they don't farm my Cresselia down, and I go ahead and shield the close combat. And yes, it is a Tentacruel. It makes sense for this Pangoro to have another poison type in the back because of how extremely weak it is to fairies. Now my opponent goes for an Acid Spray here and takes our final shield, and I need 2 more Hydro Cannons to take this Tentacruel out, but they're going to be able to reach a Scald before I can reach that Hydro Cannon. So I managed to catch the Scald on my Cresselia, and I'm okay with them catching the Hydro Cannon on Pangoro here because I might not be able to farm Pangoro down with the Shadow Claws because they're resisted, but I know I'm going to be able to farm the Tentacruel down, and we end up taking that win. GG's to our opponent. Moving on to the next battle, we're going to see a terrible lead of Shadow Kanto Ninetales. This is definitely not something I expected to see, and it's very unfortunate for me because I'm ABA weak to this, so I have to stay in, and I don't even have that Future Sight to at least hit for neutral. So yeah, this is very awkward. I'm not going to shield anything on Cresselia. I'm just going to let whatever this is go, and I will soft lose this lead. I'm hoping I can come in with Feraligatr and farm their Kanto Ninetales down, but they don't let me do that. They swap immediately into a Licky Licky, but at least now my Cobalion is going to be switch locked into Licky Licky, but I'm expecting their third Pokemon to potentially also be weak to fighting. So I go ahead and shield my Cobalion to keep it healthy, but that might have been a mistake, and then I go for a Sacred Sword here before they can reach another Shadow Ball. We take the Licky Licky out, and then they bring that Kanto Ninetales back in, and they have a move ready on it, so I go ahead and I shield that as well. We still haven't taken a shield from them, and my opponent's final Pokemon is going to be a Greninja, so I was correct. It is weak to fighting types, but my Cobalion doesn't have enough health to deal with a Greninja that has 2 shields left. And also I mess up because I should have thrown a Sacred Sword before swapping out, then I could get one of their shields out of the way, and I might have been able to take this Greninja out, but I mean, it was just a mess at this point. I had so much energy on this Cobalion. They have enough energy for 2 moves on their Greninja, and I have no shields left, so unfortunately we are going to take a loss there. GG's to our opponent. Moving on to the next battle, we're going to be up against another lead that we are ABA weak to. It is going to be Galarian Weezing, and I kind of have to stay in this. Hopefully my opponent will think I have Future Sight. Gonna build up to it and then throw Moonblast, and we take a shield from them. Okay, this is good. I'm just gonna soft lose this with Cresselia now, and this is why if I were to run Pangoro on this team, I would run the Cresselia with Future Sight, because that way I would not be ABA weak to these poison types. Now I was hoping I could get one more move off on this Weezing and get it a little bit more into a comfortable farm down range for Feraligatr, but they take our Cresselia out, and now I'm going to have Feraligatr up against Weezing, and I know this is only a Brutal Swing. They didn't build up to another move, but I'm going to go ahead and shield the second Brutal Swing, and I should be able to farm them down completely and have so much energy for the next Pokemon that's going to come in. They bring in Guzzlord, and they take an Ice Beam, and then I swap into Cobalion, hoping that their final Pokemon is not a Golurk. We get super lucky because it's a Shadow Feraligatr, and Cobalion does pretty decent against Feraligatr because of how spammy it is with those Sacred Swords. We're able to reach a third Sacred Sword against the Feraligatr, take Feraligatr out, and their final Pokemon, which is that Guzzlord, is going to have to take an Ice Beam from our Feraligatr, and we were going to take that win. GG's to our opponent. Moving on to the final battle of the video, we're going to be up against that really annoying Clefable, and as I did before, I'm just going to soft lose this lead, and hopefully I don't get too RPS'd in the back. Gonna go for these Moonblasts, and it looks like this Clefable is taking the Moonblasts a lot better than the one we faced earlier. I think the one we faced earlier might not have been fully excelled, But I'm going to go for another Moonblast here, get them into the red, and now I'm going to let Cresselia go, and my plan is to farm this Clefable down with Feraligatr, but my opponent gives up Switch, and now I can Switch Lock my Cobalion into their Licky Licky. This is so good for me, and guys, I've talked about this several times on my channel before. Never give up Switch where you don't have to. I get that my opponent was probably worried about all the energy I was going to get with Feraligatr, which can be really scary, but wait until you see what their final Pokemon is, because they could have destroyed Cobalion with their last Pokemon. They bring Clefable back in and they go for a Swift so I don't shield it, but their final Pokemon is going to be a Gastrodon. If they hadn't given up Switch, they would have been able to align their Gastrodon to my Cobalion and their Licky Licky to our Feraligatr, and that wouldn't have been good for me, but it ends up working out in my favor. I'm going to be able to land a Hydro Cannon on the Gastrodon, and I even land a Sacred Sword, and we are going to be able to double kick the Clefable and the Gastrodon down and take that win. GG's to our opponent, and that is going to be a 4-1 in that final set, taking us to the high 2300s and getting us much closer to Veteran. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like my content, please consider subscribing, maybe leave a like, it helps me out so much, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye bye!